Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome back to F1 in Focus. We are the only Formula One podcast where a Dutchie and Englishman can very much get along in the world of Formula One while having civil discussions, race recaps, and of course, discussing racing food and beverages. On show number 5, we will have to start with missing the Grand Prix of Singapore due to unforeseen personal circumstances. So we are really sorry for that. It wasn't quite what we planned, but sometimes life gets in the way. So sorry for that before we start today's show. But on today's show, we talk about the Grand Prix of Japan. We talk Max Verstappen being crowned world champions. Latifi actually getting a point on some of his last races. Some great racing actually going on in the Japanese Grand Prix. The drivers finding the team for the next season. Tractors on track. And of course, the chaos F1 rules bring at times. Or shall we almost say most of the time. And all that. And trying to do that in the next 45 minutes or so. So let's start our onions and away we go. My name is John. And with me is my dear friend, the man with the best hair in the biz. It's none other than James Hazel. Hello, James.
Hello again. How you doing?
I'm quite right, mate. World champion, second time in a row. Dutchies go nuts, although I think all Dutch were either on a bat or already turned off the television because you texted me, he's world champion, or what's going on. When I ran back to my television, I was like, what happened here?
Yeah, what a mess. I think the running theme of this podcast, for me at least, is just going to be ranting about Formula One in general.
I think it's fair, though.
Yeah. And that is just one instance of it. Like, you have, like, some of the best technical minds in the world, and they can't figure out the rules or even basic maths to some extent. I mean, that's mainly because of the interpretation of the rules, but...
I think in the end, the rules were fair. The weird thing here is, though, just to summarize, I think 95% of the people, viewers, commentators, everyone, even the teams thought we were racing for half points, right?
Everyone did, yeah.
The FIA showed some graphics during the race showing, hey, Max gets 25 points, Leclerc gets 18 points. I'm like, okay, well, that means he's world champion. And everyone said that's wrong.
Yeah.
The actual rules say when a race is flagged off, so finished under a red flag, then they look at how much they actually driven in percentage, and that's how they divide the points. So more than 75 driven is full points, 50% maximum driven is half points, etc., all the way down. So down that if you finish a race under a red flag and we didn't drive too much, you can actually, but more than 2 laps, you can actually only get points when you're top 8, I think, even.
Yeah, and those laps cannot be interrupted by a safety car. They have to be clean laps. They can't be safety car or VSC.
Exactly. So 2 laps in a row without safety car, and we have a race when it finishes on a red flag.
Yeah.
The thing is, this race didn't get red flagged. It did get a red flag in between.
Yeah, it kind of got suspended, but not ended. Yeah.
But we did actually finish the race, so that's why we got the full points.
Yeah, it's the fact that it resumed, yeah.
If you look back at the rules and you keep this explanation in mind and you read it then, you're like, actually, makes sense.
I think it's
all
just
fine.
It's just an oversight, but also I think there's a couple of things here that says a lot about Formula One in general. The first one is that, going back to what you were saying at the start of this, about them putting the points up on the screen and everyone just saying, well, that's wrong. That's because the FIA or Formula One and its broadcast often gets these graphics wrong about things. So it's not unusual for somebody to look at that and just say, that's just wrong. They've just got it wrong. Like, how many times have we...
many times this year with different tire sets.
How many times have we covered it even on this podcast? Yeah, with like tires or gaps and stuff like that, where like there was that one time, was it Lewis or Russell flicked to like a different compound of tire and then flicked back again? And it was like, it was just a glitch in the...
Yeah, I remember saying to you, oh no, Russell's going too hard. He said, now can't be. I'm looking at him as yellows.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
and it was just a mistake on the graphic. Like the graphic gets something wrong almost guaranteed every weekend. So when those points come up, and everyone just looks at it and goes, well, they're wrong. They've just put the wrong graphics up, or it hasn't taken into account that it's a shorter race. So that that to me, straight, that also says a lot about Formula One, that they get so much wrong, even on that graphical level of presenting information to the viewer, which that's not good for a start.
No, but even I'll make one better there. If it's the visual representation of informing your viewer, which is your sole responsibility as a, I don't know, producer, director, right?
Yeah.
Like in football, between matches, sometimes you get explanations. Everyone knows the rules, right? But sometimes you even get explanations. Or I was watching, I think I was watching cricket lately. Been in all night, sitting on my couch, just turning on some sports with cricket. And some things actually got explained. So they mentioned the terminology, and I got the terminology on the side of the screen. I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
They do that with all kinds of sports. If if the FIA is fully aware this is a 25 race point, a full race points, how much effort is it to put just one or two graphics in? I know which is it the favorite food of Valtteri Bottas because of these graphics. Why can't they put in this is just a full point race? If it finishes on the checkered flag, it's full points.
Yeah. I don't understand why they don't explain that, and how do they not realise that even their own feed is talking about it being half points or quarter points?
Even their app said it. Even their mobile app said
everything about
points.
And it not only that, it took until like halfway through the interviews at the end of the race when Johnny Herbert giving the interviews seemed to get it kind of radioed into his ear through the little earpiece he's wearing, and pulls bloody Max Verstappen back. He's like, "Oh yeah, but it turns out you're world champion." Like, how do they get it that wrong? Like, they've had an entire cooldown lap, they've not made any announcements or anything like that, and it's not until almost like 5 minutes after the checkered flag, really. But by the time the cars have done the cooldown lap, the drivers have got out, they've done their little celebrations with the team, the interviewers got ready, and they start doing the interviews. They've been weird and all the rest of it. Like, time has passed. How are we only just learning about it at this point? Like, to me, the FIA were caught with the pants down a little bit here as well, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, forgot about this in the rules." Dope.
But the silly thing was, Max was given an interview, and then he stepped away. He gave the microphone first to Leclerc. Leclerc said, "No, I got a penalty, so I'm third. So you go ahead, Perez." Like, oh, okay, this is weird. Max was thinking, okay, that means my gap is a little bit bigger. Oh, I'm 1 point short. Our interviewer from the Dutch television goes to Christian Horner and says, "I think you became world champion now, right? If you got full points," because that's what the FIA was saying. And Christian says, No, I just want to make sure, but I think we're 1 point short, even with Leclerc on third position. So you know what? Let's not celebrate just yet. Then Max gets pulled to the podium. The interviewer asks Christian, "Are you now world champion?" And even Christian Horner says, "I don't know. I don't even know."
Yeah.
They go back to the stage, right? To get on the podium. Max goes up. In the meanwhile, he got whispered in his ear, "Made you 1 point short." He takes off his cap, get off his towel, take a drink, and they say, "Hey, congrats with the world championship." I think it was Jensen Button that said it to him.
Yeah, he came into the cooldown room.
It's like, "No, mate, I'm 1 point short next week, mate, or like 2 weeks or something." And they say, No, you're in. You go sit in this weird Christmas chair, Santa Claus chair or something. they prepared a chair for him with I don't know, it looked really weird, with a sheep thingy on him. He had to sit there for like 5 seconds. He was actually sitting like, I don't know if this is actually correct. He didn't actually celebrate anything yet. He goes out to stage thinking he's not a world champion, because in the meanwhile, while he gets off that big Santa Claus seat, they tell him you're 1 point short. He goes on the stage. They give him the normal trophies. He gets off the stage and people tell him, "Oh, you did actually become world championship. Please sign here on the dotted line."
It just sums up Formula One for the last couple of years, really. I mean, I get that Formula One is a complex sport, but when it comes to scoring points at the end of the race, surely it shouldn't be that complex that even the teams don't understand and don't realise. Like, it should be crystal clear.
Or get informed.
I think
can't be that hard.
I think what's happened is they've fixed the rule that everyone was really upset about with Spa, which was like, we do one lap behind the safety car to see if we can go racing. Well, to see if we can go racing. They were never going to go racing. They do a lap, and then they can say, "Oh, well, we've had a race. We did one lap," and they dish out some points. They wanted to fix that because people were not happy about that. they have fixed that because now it's you've got to do a minimum of 2 laps clean, no safety car, for any points to be awarded. But then they haven't looked at what happens if you get a red flag and then you manage to resume again. And I think that has been missed.
It never happened before either, by the way.
Well, stuff like this has happened. I mean,
they've never finished under these circumstances, actually.
Have they not?
No, because the last time they actually ended on the red flag. Last time it happened a couple of races ago.
No, but I mean,
did finish on the red flag.
No, but I mean this situation where you start the race, you stop the race, and then you start the race again, but you don't get to finish all the laps because it's called by time. Because I feel like that happened. Maybe that was before they'd started doing the timing thing. Because there was like China and there was Canada, wasn't there? There was a couple of examples I can think of where it like chucked it down. And then we were just like hanging around for hours, and then we started the race again.
We had it this year in Monza where the time ticked down, but it got flagged off because of Ricciardo crashing. And then on the red flag and 75% driven.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
but
full points race
this situation...
It's just a loophole.
It feels like it hasn't been considered, and when they've fixed one set of rules, they haven't looked at the domino effects and all the other rules that need fixing. Because if you're going to say, okay, you've done less than 25% of a race, so you've only done like 5 laps, and it's red flagged, and we don't get to go racing again, you get 25% points or whatever it is, or 1/3 points, whatever. Why? This is where I can understand the team's thinkings, because why wouldn't that same reduction in points apply if you only race 25% but over 2 separate stints of a race, if that makes sense? Because what could have happened today is we could have had like half a lap without a safety car and then a red flag and everyone comes in. So at that point we haven't actually had a race to be able to dish out any points. And then it could have been that the track didn't dry up until there was 15 minutes to go. So they start the race with 15 minutes. They go out behind the safety car. You do like 2 or 3 exploratory laps around behind the safety car. That burns 5 minutes, and then you get racing, and you might only end
2 laps and you finish off the race.
You might only end up getting like a 3 or 4 lap race and get full points for it.
Yeah.
Because those are the rules at the moment. That is going to get fixed before next season, guaranteed.
It will be. But this is... So when it happened, we were chatting, and I was actually running between television and getting my kids ready for swimming class. And I actually halfway through swimming class, I saw, hey, he's jumping, go back to your seat now. Like, oh, this is weird. Then I didn't make any sense. But thinking about it, when something like this is in a rule book and when something like this happens once in, 30, 40 years, and it's part of a new rule change, it is so hard to recover from. I think the only thing which we can really blame the FIA or production for is the fact that we didn't see any graphics. I think it wasn't too hard to inform with a message. They send emails all the time. They're in contact with the leaders all the time. Like I said, we know what Valtteri Bottas' favorite animal is. And I yesterday saw that Lando's favorite movie is Happy Gilmore. Then it would be too hard to just send a message out. Hey, guys, this is when it gets checkered flag, it's kind of a full point race.
I mean, but this kind of also goes back a little bit to what I was saying a minute ago, and that is that I don't think they've fully realised and they're fully new, because otherwise it would have been played all over the screens and blasted everywhere. Well, the second Leclerc came third.
Here's another thing.
we knew what the points. We knew what was required of Verstappen and Leclerc going into the race on like full points. So we knew what needed to happen if it was full points. So if they knew it was full points, and they know that, I suppose they needed to decide about Leclerc's penalty, didn't they? That wasn't guaranteed, so that actually killed a bit of time. I forgot about that, because Leclerc he crossed the line second, and then they gave him the 5-second penalty, and then they said, "Okay, Max, you're the champion." But
so there's 2 things.
So
there.
maybe the FIA did know about the full points thing, in which case, they should have communicated that with the audience and with the teams, and all they had to do was put that in the broadcast and just say, because the race is resumed, it's full points. That's all you need,
You finish, you finish the race, it's full points.
You can put a bit about which section of the rules covers that. If the teams want to check it or whatever, fine, whatever. But I still think, and I can't remember if I said it on this podcast or if I've definitely said it to you, and that is like going back to coming up with scenarios and covering scenarios and having rules for scenarios. How hard is it for the FIA to have a team of people that this is just their job? Just imagine up scenarios and just think, what happens if this happens? Go through the rules. Does it make sense? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, we'll leave it like that. What happens if this happens? Because this isn't a scenario that would be completely unexpected. This has to be a scenario that you would imagine would happen somewhere.
Oh, better yet, it's something they must have thought about because they did resume the race.
Exactly.
They could have just as easy
so
called
they've
it off.
thought
And
about
they were
it
like,
at some point.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, it feels like they've thought about it based on the rules where you just got points just for starting the race, even behind a safety car. And rather than like how they've adjusted it recently for this season, where you have to have clean laps.
And rolling start against
also,
a standing start. There was a little couple of things where like, wasn't it supposed to be a red flag into standing start these days?
Because, I mean, this is a genuine question that I don't know if you'll even be able to answer. I don't know. But the other thing is, so they've got this set of rules, right? You've got to do a minimum of 2 laps with no safety car for the rules to count, or the laps to count, or the race results to count, and to dish out any kind of points. But then you have another rule saying if the race is resumed, it's full points. Now, does that, if the race is resumed rule, also say, but it has to be clean laps, and it has to be a minimum number of clean laps? Because what happens if you do a lap behind the safety car, or you do a start and it ends up going behind the safety car like we had today with Sainz's crash?
I think the first one goes now. The other one is a section B, so to speak.
Right.
So I think the first one always goes first. You need to have 2 laps, then this is what happens. If you
right.
do 2 laps, that means 0 points. It means the rest of the
So in that case, is that because this second part of the rule is actually being thought about based on the first part of the rule?
Yeah, I think so.
Or is it just accidentally lingering there? But even still, have they not thought about this? Like, you know, even if we had 10 laps today, rather than like half a lap before the first safety car came out, and you get a red flag, and that red flag might have just purely been because we had like torrential rain because it's typhoon season, and then you only get
Definitely was typhoon season. Yeah.
Exactly. But then you only get, like I said earlier, a minute ago or two, like, what if you would then only get 2 laps at the end of the 3-hour window or whatever it is for the race to take place in? So you've had 10 laps, which you would say, okay, that's like 1/3 points or whatever. I can't remember what it is. And then you get 2 laps, and then suddenly it's like, oh, well, that's full points because we've resumed, even though it's only been 2 points. Like, how has nobody considered this?
No, I think that's a very fair point. There's another
Viewers
point
might not, but we're not the rule makers, and we're not the people making all of this money and spending all of this money to come up with this.
I think very much the teams weren't aware of it. Christian Horner saying, I'm actually not sure. Let's just wait for the celebration.
Yeah.
I mean, that says it all. The other thing which really confused me, normally it says the time runs down, right? If you have a 3-hour race.
Yeah.
And you have a +1 lap.
Yeah. Oh, they called it early, didn't they, by accident?
But Max went over the line with 2 seconds remaining.
And they called that the final lap, didn't they?
They called that the final lap. But I think myself, but I think even everyone from Red Bull was like, you know what? That means you need to be, there's 2 laps remaining.
Yeah.
So they actually said to Checo, you got two more attempts to take Leclerc.
Yeah.
Then what happened is Max went past the line and said, man, it's over. And even there's no television, there's no recordings. I saw at least. Nobody saw Max going over the finish line.
No, it didn't.
So
because normally it would cut to that.
Yeah,
it was just another mistake by the FIA. They called it because I think what happens. When has this happened before? I feel like something very similar to this has happened before. When they call the final lap, they can't go back on that, and they basically just have to call the race 1 lap short. This happened
There was a flag off somewhere in the US, maybe. I think there was somewhere a flag off where Will Smith maybe be the one that actually called it off. Or Christina Aguilera. Some celebrity waved it a lap too soon or something.
Yeah, this has happened in like the last 2 or 3 years. Someone waved the final lap flag 1 lap early, and because they did that, they had to then, it's just part of procedure or whatever, but because they'd effectively warned all the drivers it's the final lap, they then have to end it that following lap.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened. They accidentally called it the final lap, and then it was like, oh, we can't go back on that. Even though technically he crossed the line with 2 seconds to spare. So really the next time he came around would have been the final lap, and then we would have got the checkered flag after that.
Yeah. And this makes it even weirder, because what happened is Max had a 27-second lead, right? So that's something about, I mean, drive today was Max Verstappen was perfect. Like, no one can say something about him, right? Just, it's the only one that sort of made the rain work for him and just drove a second lap away from everyone.
Yeah.
So deserved winner, nothing to be. But if it was be full points, what he needed was an 8-point lead to Leclerc. That means if he wins and he gets fastest lap, he wins the world championship no matter what happens.
Yeah, and I think they would have gone for that fastest lap.
He would have. He had 27-second lead. There's a 21-second you need for the pit stop there.
Yeah.
He asked to Red Bull, "Shall we go in? Shall we do it?" Right? And
said,
they say, "Nah, don't risk it." If Red Bull knew it was a full point, they would always say, "Yeah, go for it, mate. Let's try."
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I think they would have done that. I mean, we've talked about this before, haven't we? About like risking pitting for.
You can either win it here or you can win it in 2 weeks, then, right? So why not try it?
That's the thing. There's no point. There's no point in not risking it. He was guaranteed to win the championship,
and now he was like, you know what? It's raining. It's all right, and it's half points anyway, so it doesn't matter. At 1 point, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So,
and he had such a buffer. Like, they could have just done a nice slow 3 or 4 second pit stop, and he was still out with breathing space.
Well, when an extra lap, he would have actually might still do it. But now it's like, hey, Mac, then was it? Like, oh, okay. So we missed the celebration from Max winning. That was weird. Max couldn't know that he was world champion because Leclerc finished second, right?
Yeah.
What I found amazingly strange is that last week we took 2.5 hours in Singapore for Perez to get a penalty, or not a penalty, or just a 5-second penalty, and didn't change anything.
Yeah.
It took him 2.5 seconds to decide that Leclerc should get a penalty. Yeah. I think a fully deserved penalty, but still the difference in timing there was extraordinary.
I have one problem with this, and it goes back to Silverstone when Perez
does the same.
Cut the corner, gained an advantage, and then pushed Leclerc off the track when he re-entered the track, and he didn't get a penalty for that. That is the one time where that is like one of the main reasons why I thought, like, if it wasn't for the fact that, you know, Max is already celebrating, he's won the championship, it doesn't make any difference anyway. Like, there's no point in Ferrari fighting this. But under any other circumstances, Ferrari should have appealed that decision. And yes, technically, I think he probably should have got a penalty for what he did. But I would just point back to Silverstone and just say, you didn't punish Perez for doing an even worse maneuver than that. Like, where is the consistency here? That was this season as well, after you started like changing the rules on like how far alongside someone has to be deemed like entitled to space and stuff like that. Like, it's just another problem for Formula One. There is no consistency. Even when they rewrite or tweak the rules, they still don't apply they change the rules to try and promote better fighting and stuff, and in anticipation for like these new aerodynamic rules that's supposed to make the fighting closer, and that is definitely happening. But then they don't apply them properly. And I don't want to get too wound up about Silverstone, but I just look back at that and I think, why was that a penalty today when you look at what Perez did at Silverstone?
No, I think the other way around, right? This was a clear penalty, but so should have been Perez in Silverstone.
Yes, exactly, yeah. But I think that it gives Ferrari a case to be able to say, well, he did far worse back then and he didn't get a penalty, so why are we getting a penalty here?
Yeah, Binotto was fair, though. He said afterwards, I don't think we should have deserved a penalty. I could have pointed towards Silverstone. I would have fighted, but I'm not going to ruin someone's party.
Exactly. There's no point.
Has to celebrate in 2 weeks anyways.
At this point in the season, there's no point doing it because Leclerc's not going to win the championship this year, even if he'd finished second.
He needed
even
to
if it
win
had been half
everything
points.
then, and Max
Yeah.
didn't need to score any points.
Yeah, Max would have to start like DNFing every race. It's just not going to happen. So
And Leclerc to win every race. So.
exactly. So it was not going to happen. So in some ways, there's no point doing it. And the the Constructors' Championship is effectively over as well, isn't it? So Ferrari have got nothing to gain from doing it. If it had been like 4 races ago, I could see that they would have done, but
yeah,
today, no point.
No, fair. And it shows sportsmanship, though. I think that's
definitely. Yeah.
That's quite right. So 1-2 for Red Bull in Japan.
Yep.
Max World Championship. 12 wins this season already. So
and
14 wins for Red Bull this season. That's
it's
pretty impressive, though. In a season where we thought would be very tight.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising. I mean, even before this season started, we thought it was probably going to be a little bit closer than it has been in like the past with where Mercedes had been dominating for a few years. And then at the start of the season, it looked like it was certainly going to be a close fight between Ferrari and Red Bull. And it's just, I mean, Ferrari have screwed themselves up a number of times, but they also they haven't been consistently quick like Red Bull have been. Red Bull have turned up to every track, and if they haven't been the fastest car, they've been the second fastest car. And Ferrari haven't really quite done that. You know, there's been times where Ferrari have been like fighting with a Mercedes, where Red Bull have just like disappeared off into the distance.
Yeah, I think Max had 2 DNFs at the start of the season, race 1 and race 3, right?
That's right, yeah.
Which gave Leclerc 44
Leclerc had 2. Lead. Yeah, Leclerc got 2 wins.
And a second
he
place.
won the 2 races that Max
became
DNF'd,
second when Max won the second race.
Yeah, so he had like a 50 odd point advantage in 3 races.
And so that seemed different. But besides that, Max has almost, except Monaco, he came third. The rest he either won or became second.
Yeah,
mostly everything he won. And he came 2 races where he was off. Last week, Singapore, where he wasn't racing his best race, but also got really screwed over in qualifying, of course.
Yeah, and then he had a really bad start, didn't he?
So he had a fun race, I think, but not a good result. But still got in 7th, so still scores points.
Yeah,
and I think in Silverstone, where he got punished for a nasty crash, where he got much damage on him.
But he still the aero damage, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, but he still came in 7th with fighting with Mick, and I think was very much so. That shows something about his consistency this year. I don't think you can say Max made maybe one slip up in Spain, but that's about it. Honestly.
Yeah, there's a little 180 in Hungary that cost him no time.
Yeah, that was a show.
Yeah, that was just like, I'm so far ahead, or I'm doing so well, I can just do a little pirouette here.
But that's it. I think he showed real dominance, right, this season.
Just styling on the grid, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, Leclerc today, it just kind of reinforces what we've talked about.
27 seconds lap in a 27.
Well, the mistake. Like locking up into the last corner on the last chicane of the last lap. That
showed the pressure. If you
Max
put pressure
Max
on
Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton don't really make those sorts of mistakes. And that's where Leclerc's just not quite in the same league, even though he's effectively being the title contender. He's not
France,
on the same
for
level.
example, right?
Yeah, he's not on the same level. He needs. I think the only way really Leclerc beats Max Verstappen in a championship is if he has a clearly fast, or maybe not clearly, but he has a faster car that is like probably like the reverse of what we've had this year, where he's got the consistently faster car, rather than the car that's a bit like hit and miss depending on whatever the variables are that are causing Ferrari to occasionally be like that much slower than Red Bull. And
but a tire wear.
But then it's not just the Red Bull being fast; it's Max Verstappen being fast. Because if you compare what Max is doing with that car compared to what Perez is doing with that car, it's down to the driver as well. And that's always the case with Formula One. Like everyone's always like, "Oh, you've got the best car, you got the best car." But people are going to be saying that about Max this year. That's not fair because you have to be.
You drive 27 seconds gap here. you start Hungary in 10th, you win Hungary
Wins the
with
race.
8,
Spa starts
15, or
yeah,
start
like,
Spa.
effectively 14th because there was a car miss in front of him, wasn't there? He started
Wins by
15th on the
25
grid,
seconds as well there. Something.
but yeah, still like wins the race by a mile.
Overtakes his teammate who started second.
Yeah,
Win the race 25 seconds over his teammate. So, yeah, and I think
everyone rates Perez. I mean, I don't rate him as highly as some people do because he always has these mid-season lulls where he's just like
7 races absent.
I've signed my contract now, so I don't have to try, do I? He does that quite a bit, but yeah. But to be fair, he had a really good race in Singapore.
Singapore was a terrific race.
Yeah,
he fought really hard.
He handled the pressure, which Leclerc can't do. He had Leclerc breathing down his neck for like a significant portion of that race, and he was faultless.
That's definitely true. Talk about pressure and being faultless, though.
Is this our segue into Latifi scoring points?
Well, it may be. Like, I think now Latifi getting a point today. Well done, mate. I'm happy for you. We now know his contract doesn't get extended. This is it for you. Getting a point in the end of your career. I'm very happy with him, for him, right? It's 2 points, actually, right?
Yeah, he got 9th, didn't he? Yeah.
So, I mean, the problem with Latifi is it's just a friendly fella when you see him on interviews, see him talk. There's nothing to hate about him, but he just doesn't got right. I think that's
I think his reaction after Monza was a little bit off, and frankly, a little bit out of order. Just some of the stuff he said and the way he said it, but at the same time,
he knew it. We said about that, and he knew it's done.
Yeah, I mean, if he didn't already know he wasn't getting a contract, he at least knew that he was fighting for a contract, and that was not a good showing for any kind of fight he was trying to make to be re-signed by Williams. So he was under a lot of pressure.
He's not anymore now.
Well, now he's not, no, because he's not got.
Maybe that helped him.
Yeah. He benefited from the early pit stop, didn't he? He did the same as Vettel and pitted when the safety car came in.
He actually went out at the same time with Vettel.
Yeah,
it was an unsafe release, honestly, from Vettel.
Well, no, I wasn't 100% convinced by that because of the fact that Vettel's light went green and he set off when Latifi was effectively doing the same thing. He just had a much slower getaway from his pit box, and I think that was just wheel spin.
Maybe. I didn't get it investigated either, so I think he might.
Well, yeah, they looked at it and they said it was fine.
No.
And I think it's because he got a green light. He got the green light when it was safe. It was just he was that much slower getting out that it made it look a lot closer. And I don't know if they can really stop him once he started going. So I don't know. That might be another little grey area in the rules about how do you define it.
When nothing happens, it doesn't actually matter. I think. Right?
Yeah,
they dealt with it like.
And he did well with that. He did the best he could with the situation going on to Inters. I honestly thought more cars were going to do that. As soon as the safety car went in, I thought, like, the wet tyre, even when the track is flooded, is that much slower than like the Inters. Like, you could, where you've got like sections of the track where you can go fast, you can go that much faster on the intermediates. That when you hit a point where the wets are actually a benefit to you, you don't lose enough time by slowing down on the intermediates to kind of negate that difference. Christian Horner was saying this to Sky, I think it was, and basically said, like, the wet tyre, even when the track is like wet tyre conditions, is 4 seconds slower than the intermediates because there's enough sections of the track where the intermediates are fine that when you have to slow down for a risk of aquaplaning or whatever, you don't lose enough time over the wet tyre to be worth taking the wet tyre instead. So I just assumed when the safety car came in that basically everyone was just going to pit for intermediates.
I didn't, because of the simple reason what happens if one spins off and you get another red flag and then you start in the pits, you got a lane up in the pit lane at place 20.
I suppose there's that.
Stopper, right?
I didn't
so
think
I think
that.
The top players were just like, you know what? If everything's quiet, let the back markers go. Let them do it first.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's actually faster and if it's safe. Everyone stays on 2 laps.
Maybe your top 3 don't do it then. I think
Alonso did it. rather fast. Alonso did it at P5 rather fast.
Well, he was late to pit, wasn't he? He was much later to pit than everyone else. He did an extra lap because he was leading the race at one point.
Sorry, I meant Ocon.
Ocon, right. Yeah, well, what I was going to say is that if any of the top drivers are going to do it, I'm surprised Mercedes just didn't do it with Hamilton.
Same.
Because he had a chance to leapfrog at least 3 cars in front of him, if not everyone.
Why not do it if you're Leclerc, though?
Well, so Leclerc, this is where I would
can't
actually...
keep up with Max. He was already 4 seconds behind Max after 1 lap.
No, but I was thinking, I was thinking immediately, like when the safety car comes in, pit with the safety car. Because that's what Latifi and Vettel did. Because then you maximise your time on the intermediates. But
then at least when you do it right away, you have to force Red Bull into making a move or not.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's like, okay, Max can drive away because he has got clear sight anyways.
Yeah.
I know after 1 lap he had a 4-second lead already, so you knew it was pretty much done. An undercut would be useless with 4 seconds ahead. So you knew Max would go in. The moment he saw someone after, like in the top 6 go in, he would go in as well. So
I suppose some of the other top teams would also be looking at what the other drivers were doing after they'd paid for intermediates and maybe wanted to let someone else make the gamble first, which is, that's pretty common.
It's how the cookie crumbles at times, right?
The commentary here kept going on about how, it was more Crofty, it wasn't Jensen Button. I wish he'd be on commentary more often because he's great. But Crofty, I'm sure it was Crofty was saying like that Vettel was losing time on the leaders on the intermediates. He was slower.
No, he said the fastest lap, the first lap he came out.
Yeah, he was constantly 37 seconds behind Max.
He said the fastest lap straight after.
Yeah.
Second fastest lap again, and then Russell did it.
And he wasn't losing any time. So it's like, if you're not losing time,
you should go.
Just go into the intermediates because it's only going to get faster. And
because they kept Mick in 3rd place on wets, and they kept him in for 4 laps or something.
And then he ended up finishing last. Until Gasly got his penalty. That was a gamble. They were basically doing
if they
what
got
you
a
were
red
thinking.
flag, I get it.
Yeah.
But
they were doing what you were thinking, but
not 4 laps. Once you got overtaken by Hamilton, Ocon, Alonso, then go in, man.
I can see what they were doing. They were basically leaving him out as long as they could to keep him in a points position. That's what they did. As soon as he dropped out of the points, that's when they pitted him.
Yeah,
and it was
just useless. He was
just constantly playing the gamble. It was like, if we get the red flag this lap, we're gonna, even if we're in 8th, we've jumped 5 cars.
And they're equal with AlphaTauri, I guess. So why not gamble?
Yeah, so it's a massive gamble that didn't pay off. But
his career's done as well. We were talking about drivers. I think Mick, you said maybe Mick stays in. I say Mick crashing after the free practice, and the fact that they left him out to dry today. At least they could gamble, but he was the one they took a gamble with. I think he's done for, right?
Probably, maybe. Honestly, I don't really know. I can't tell.
You got to find someone. But Giovinazzi's there every single week now. So
yeah, I don't know what Haas are going to do. I saw a rumor. I don't know how true it is, though. A week or 2 ago, that Haas were now leaning towards keeping Schumacher, but then you don't know if that's like just playing games with driver market a little bit. Whether it's to do with negotiations with another driver or another team, to try and make them take a little bit of a pay cut or something, or whether it's just someone said, "Oh, I think they're going to stick with Schumacher," and then someone else has gone around and said, "Oh, they're going to stick with Schumacher," because how these one thing gets said, and then the key word being, maybe, or something like that, gets dropped from the quote, and suddenly it turns into going from someone guessing something to someone stating it as some kind of fact. So
maybe we'll get half points today. So
well, yeah,
that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Worst kept secret though when they talk about driver market.
Yeah.
Gasly to Alpine confirmed this weekend. Finally, we said like 4 weeks ago or something that was very likely to happen.
Yeah.
And that means Nick de Vries to AlphaTauri.
Yeah, that's great.
Which I think was a pretty good move. But then I looked at the standing today. I was like, you went from Williams to AlphaTauri. You were in Formula One, but the current situation at AlphaTauri isn't that great either. But hey, you got a
No,
chance
but
now.
it's at least it's a permanent seat, and it's in the Red Bull family.
Multiple year contract, he said.
And the Red Bulls don't mind swapping a driver around if they need to. So if Perez has a rough year, maybe he can get shuffled up to be Max Verstappen's teammate.
Could very much be right.
Especially if they're going to turn around and say, Perez, we're not renewing your contracts next year.
Which could also be considering age.
Because then they can shuffle him without any repercussions as well.
Yeah. That's cool, though. I mean, two Dutch in Formula One. I quite like it. Max advised him to call Marco and get that deal done, he said. So I think that helped. I think that helped for
Max definitely had a word, I think. Yeah.
So that definitely helps. But that's cool. That means we got possibly one seat at Haas still left. Daniel Ricciardo has confirmed today that he won't have a seat next year.
No, he's focusing on the year after. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably being a reserve driver somewhere.
Mercedes was getting floated around as an idea because obviously they've lost Nick De Vries now, haven't they? So
that's true. But they got a lot of. They still have Stoffel as well, right? So
yeah,
don't necessarily think you need to have yet another non-Mercedes driver in. But I mean, we hope he gets a cool seat. We all
I
like
hope so.
him.
Yeah.
And then we have one seat left, and that is, I'm very much thinking. Oh, of course, Latifi, who's got his contract not extended.
Yeah,
we got Sargent 4 weeks ago. Could very much still be the case.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know who else it would be. Honestly, I've not been following the junior series as much this year, so I don't know who might get promoted up and put into that seat as a here you go, here's your entrance into Formula One, prove yourself kind of role. So. I really don't know who.
It's also the least interesting seat of them all. So we'll see.
And it doesn't even have to be a young driver. I mean, look at Albon getting put in a Williams seat. They could
or
do
Nick,
some.
getting an Alpha now at 27. So
there's
so plenty of
they
options.
could do something like that. I can understand why Ricciardo wouldn't want that seat. He knows
his career over when he does, right?
He's a better driver than a Williams seat. But yeah, I mean, could Mick maybe side shuffle across there if Haas ditch him? I don't know. And plus also
the problem with Mick is, for me, I think he's a cool guy, but where did he actually show the potential? There's no outstanding performance anywhere, and
he's had
always what keeps clinging to him is, you crashed at Monaco, you crashed there, you crashed there, you crashed there.
He's had a couple of decent races. He had an all right race at
Silverstone this year. That's basically
Silverstone was a good one. He had a good race at Zandvoort. Was a pretty good race for him. A pretty good weekend overall for him. Because he was massively outperforming Magnussen, wasn't he? That race.
Yeah, but I mean, Haas started off this year pretty well, and he was nowhere to be seen.
He was nowhere at the start, no. But I think it took a while for him to just kind of settle in this season or something. But yeah, I mean, K-Mag probably shocked him a little bit because he came in just swinging and just was dominating.
Which is cool.
At the start of the season, it was great to see. Yeah.
So we have to talk about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I've got. I was just thinking who else could go to Williams. I don't know, basically.
Yeah, we don't know either. We'll stop guessing because the last time we spent 45 minutes talking about Colton Herta, and you know how that ended up.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll not go there someday. Yeah. There's so much to discuss, though, budget cap stuff, but let's wait till we actually get some results in next week.
There's no point covering hypotheticals on that, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all leaked information and hearsay so far, so I don't think that's... much speculation going on, but the one thing we have to do though is Sainz spinning off, being red flagged, and there has been a tractor on track. I think that has to be our last topic to finish off the show with.
Yeah. Again, I mean, it's just another reason to rant about Formula One. The second that car spun off, hit the wall, and was then the cameras cut to him before he'd even finished moving, and he was half on the track with the entire back of his car wrecked. That car was not going to move. why is somebody not just immediately scrambling for the safety car button or the red flag button? Because you've got...
They were really fast with the safety car, though. I think the safety car was really fast. Yeah.
I don't think they were fast enough still. I mean, they still got another, like... Max was still like halfway around the lap. They called the safety car out just in time to catch Max on the straight. Like I think Max was coming up to like 130R or whatever when they called the safety car. So you
got a 130 and then you got the chicane, so it's not that far.
Yeah, exactly. So they basically at that point they'd made a decision. It's like we've got to put the safety car out now if we want to catch Max. And I think it should have been called before that. I think it should have been called as soon as the camera's looking at a car that is clearly never going to move again without assistance because its rear wings hanging off and its back wheels are not pointing straight. It's half in the road. It's in those conditions. Like, honestly, how science...
you can't see him either, by the way.
Exactly, because of the conditions. How science didn't get T-boned by another car is just pure luck. Like, if forgetting the tractor, someone could have died just through a car hitting a car that was stationed around the track like that. Look at Spa a couple of years ago.
Spa last year, yeah.
Was that last year?
Oh, 2 years. 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was
on top of Rouge, where they just drove straight through the car.
That could have happened today.
That went a lot faster though than today.
Yeah, but it's still...
But still hurts.
that kind of impact with the cars like that, like driving at that sort of speed, like they're not really made for that, are they? Like a stationary car being... or it doesn't even have to be stationary, but a car being hit by the front of a car into the side of a car at those sorts of speeds is like there's only so much they can design for.
Science said it was scary because I wanted to get out, but I thought it was safer not to get out. Actually,
100%, he did the right thing there. If he like imagine if he was half getting out of the car and the car
and then got hit,
like that doesn't bear thinking about. It's just potentially horrendous.
But then they clean up the car. After the safety car comes on track, they pick up everything and they red flag the section the moment Max and the crew hits the second turn of Suzuka. But there's 2 cars behind, far behind.
The red flag didn't come out until after the pack had already passed under safety car and yellow flag, because what really all of this comes down to is Pierre Gasly. And his ranting about it, which was entirely justified. And that is, I wouldn't say he's flying around the track. He's going faster around the track than they are behind the safety car. But even under a virtual safety car or a double yellow flag situation, they're going faster than the safety car, because the safety car is restricted by the fact that, it's a high performance car, but it's still effectively a road car. I mean, it's got, it might have like suspension done and tires and all the rest of it. It was stuff to... It
doesn't got 1,000 brake horsepower, no. Over that weight.
So it can only go so fast, and it can only go so fast around a corner because it doesn't have the downforce that Formula 1 car has. So he's coming around the track basically trying to catch up to the back of the pack, which that always happens. That's nothing new. Like, they have a delta to stick to, and that delta is faster than the safety car. So he is going to be going faster than what the safety car will be doing. So he's going to be going around the track quicker. And he comes up on a tractor in the middle of the circuit, or maybe not in the middle of the circuit, that's exaggerating, but it's basically on the circuit, almost completely blinded by the spray and just the conditions. So Pierre doesn't really see it until he's almost on top of it. But fortunately, he's not on that line anyway. And there's the argument that, like, well, there's been a crash and he should know this, that, and the other. But he doesn't know the state of the car that crashed. He doesn't know that it's definitely in that same place. He doesn't know that there's a tractor on circuit. So if anything, if you're going to blame anyone for what Pierre did, it's his team, because his team should have said, there's a car half on the track, there's marshals going onto the track, there's now a tractor going onto the track, it's double yellows. Slow right down, basically. But then the other thing was, like, it feels like, I feel like you're going to have to forgive me. I feel like I'm being very cynical about Formula One at the moment, and I can't help it, because
I've not noticed.
Doing a lot of things that are making me feel cynical. What it feels like to me is they just completely forgot about Pierre Gasly. And when he comes flying around the track up to a tractor on the circuit, and Vettel, when he comes flying around the track, I say flying relative to the safety car.
Wow, 200 kph thrill, right?
That was later on, though.
No, it was there. He was 200 kph there. He was 250 when he got the penalty.
Oh, okay.
So he set himself about 200 when he came there.
But if he's within his delta at the time, that's all he's got to drive to.
Yeah. No,
so
fair, and I think that's true.
If they start doing stuff that is not safe to a delta, then you've got a problem with your delta, not with the driver and how he's driving.
I think they realized, because then the moment he got there, they red flagged.
Exactly. This is what I'm getting at. I think they completely forgot that Pierre Gasly was had pitted. He wasn't bunched up with the rest of the field. He comes out of the pits. He's trying to catch up to the back of the safety car, as we've already determined is normal, and he is entitled to do as long as he's not breaking his deltas. And then I think someone has looked at the track map and said, hang on a minute, we've already got a tractor going out. The conditions are absolute garbage. And we've got Pierre Gasly flying around like he's one corner away.
And Vettel's behind him still, right?
Yeah. Hit the red button. So it turns to a red flag literally like a second before he is at the scene of that incident with the tractor on the circuit. And they can't turn around and say, well, he drove past it under a red flag. You gave him like a second warning. At that point, he can't really do anything.
That's not what he got the penalty for, though.
No. But I mean, if they're trying to defend against,
it felt like they did that, honestly. But
yeah, they were basically saying, "Oh, Pierre was going too fast behind the red flag."
No.
It's like, well, the red flag, he only got like a second warning.
And if you break there, he just runs into it anyways.
Yeah, and you got all that water on the track.
Enough,
He's just got the track. All he's going to do is aquaplane off or slide off, so he's got to be very careful, like driving the car.
Yeah, and he gets his frustration right because he misses the tractor. He sees Sainz standing there, but he immediately thinks about his buddy that passed away 6 years ago now.
I think is it 6 or is it 8? I thought
8,
it was
maybe already. Could be.
I think it's been quite a while now.
Could be,
but.
In Japan as well, by the way. Although the tractor wasn't on the race, of course. So.
No, it was a slightly different set of circumstances, and they didn't have things like the virtual safety car rules, and that's why the virtual safety car rule was brought in, was to stop people from. Because at the time, you would only have like yellows. You wouldn't have full track yellows. You'd only have incident yellows, and then the rest of the track would be green. So you'd still be. The track was still a racetrack, even though there'd be sections of the track where it would say, "Don't race." And people push those boundaries a little bit, didn't they, at the time? Because, if you
play by the rules... situation nonetheless, though, I think. And I get his frustration. FIA now stated that they are going to do an investigation.
And they should. They need to look at this procedure. Yeah. I mean...
I see people saying you can't, you have to move you can't have a red flag every time you have to move away a car.
No.
There's something to be said about that as well, I think.
Well, the real problem...
But in this situation, sorry. You can't put the car off the track without a truck in this situation, right? Without a crane.
Yeah.
That means you have to put the crane on the track.
Yeah.
People say, and I think I agree there, is you can't always then red flag the race and do it. No. But I do think you have to take into consideration that there's no visibility here. So there's no way to see it until you're there.
They just have to use...
that should be the reason to say, okay, you know what? When it's raining like this and the visibility is poor, then it should always be red flagged when the tractor's out. Because in Monza, they did the same with Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
And it almost went wrong with De Vries, honestly. But it wasn't too much of an issue because you can see it miles away.
Yeah.
When you came there and you saw yellow flag, it's double yellow, and
they had the entire pack bunched up, and that is the key difference, because that was why the safety car ended up catching Russell, and that was to create a gap, because everyone was complaining after that, like why did it catch Russell and why didn't it catch?
That's why
Max Verstappen. It was to create a gap for a truck to be on the track and for the marshals to do their thing, and that's fair enough. And that's all they needed to do today. Just don't put the tractor on until all the cars are 100% bunched up. And then you can say, right, tractor goes on. The cars are only going to be able to go past this scene at 50 miles an hour or whatever it is because they are behind the safety car. They can't go any faster than the safety car.
Now you can inform people.
And then you've got no problem. All they have to do is wait one more lap before they put the tractor out.
Like you said, it's probably a mistake, communication error. They went out, then they called
or
it.
just somebody jumped the gun. You know, someone's just thought, oh, they've gone past. Quick, come on, lads, let's get out there, get the tractor out. I mean, I can't remember how it works.
There's also in Japan, there's been more mistakes, not like this, but with safety cars, with procedures, with flags.
Yeah,
where there's a communication error because of the languages.
Yeah.
Where it's called by race control, but has to be executed by the stewards that are not. There is a barrier there.
Definitely, yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me if there's something up there as well.
Maybe, but I think they just, like I was saying as well, they just have to apply a little bit of common sense, like the conditions as well. Like just consider what's going. Consider the conditions. Consider the track. Consider everything, and it's better to be too safe than not safe enough.
So the race director we had today is a very safe one, by the way.
Yeah,
he's known to be extremely safe.
Something went wrong today with it because it wasn't safe enough.
Nobody didn't want to start the race in the rain. He didn't want to. He postponed the race directly straight away again. I think everything went well except this moment. So there has to be some. I'm curious to the investigation, but I think we both agree it should never have happened, and it's a good thing. There's no. And people sometimes say he's overreacting, but knowing what happened to his friend, of course.
That's the problem.
It's a little bit of trauma as well. You go past, you remember the track, you remember the incident, and of course you're scared, and of course you're frustrated, and you're rightfully so.
Every time any of that, particularly that generation of driver that were like close with Bianchi and drove with him, are all going to feel it very fresh every time they go to Suzuka because that's where it happened. So when I think that's what magnified it for Pierre because it was at Suzuka and it just emotions are high, adrenaline gets pumping
overall. Actually,
yeah, I mean he'll have adrenaline pumping because he's thinking that was a near death experience potentially, like what was that, and then he's got emotions running high because it's at Suzuka and it's the same thing that killed a friend of his.
And not to forget, he's been on edge all weekend. Qualifying was very frustrated, very terrible.
Yeah, he was having problems with the car.
He said the team screwed him over. So all the frustration and then being scared and get your heart rate up all the way to 250, I think gives him the right to be so. The penalty, I have to say that the penalty they gave him has nothing to do with this incident itself.
No.
But after that incident, he hit the pedal even harder to get closer, and he did exceed the delta by far. And then he was on the red flag, and he was far exceeding the delta. And he also stated this evening, to be honest, it happened on turn 14 and 15, I think he said. The incident was turn 12. I got the penalty for turn 14 and 15. Completely agree with everything they said about that. I'm fully responsible for that. So that's good.
To me, that's no different to... I don't know, I'm trying to think of a decent example now, but that's just emotions and adrenaline.
Still very dangerous.
It's dangerous, and he deserves a penalty. And he's gone away, he's cooled down, and he's thought about it with a clear head and thought, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. That was stupid." Everybody's done something like that in life.
Exactly. I think everyone forgives Pierre, though, but I think it's. I just wanted to make clear that it has nothing to do with the fact he passed the tractor itself. Those are two separate incidents. Both people were wrong. Gasly was wrong with the penalty, and the tractor was wrong being on track.
Yeah,
both incidents got investigated. The one is still ongoing, and for the other one, Gasly got the penalty.
Even if Pierre was going too fast past that scene, that doesn't
still
mean
make it good.
It doesn't mean it's okay for the tractor to be there. Like just because he's done something wrong doesn't mean that the FIA hasn't done something wrong, and vice versa. Like you can have two things that are wrong.
Still doesn't make it right.
Well, yeah.
Talk about not going wrong, James.
Yeah,
there's something we've been doing, which we could have done better. Of course, we missed Singapore Grand Prix, but what we also missed was our Q to end the podcast and try to make it in an hour. We didn't miss it yet this week, so I wanted to try if we can round it up this week.
Yeah,
and maybe return shorter, even if there's no Grand Prix going, because there's so much to talk about what we have to cut a deal. Yeah. James, where can people find you? Is my question then.
On Twitter, I am at F1 in Focus James. All one word.
Yeah, perfect. You can find the show at F1 in Focus Pod, and of course on all podcast services around the world. It's lights out for tonight, James. Yeah. I had to ask what you were eating or drinking. Do you have something?
No, because I can't drink. I'm on antibiotics, so
right. I got a drink, but that's not relevant. I got a Japanese special though. I got the yuki salad tonight.
Oh yeah,
which is just basically green salad with chicken and everything in it. That's all right. But sometimes it has a little bit of wasabi in it. So when you take a bite, you have to curse out loud. See you next week.
See you next time. See ya.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.